Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. My name is Donnie, Druin, joined by my co-host Kevin Hicks. Kevin, we have two preseason games down, one to go as we are talking right now. The Cardinals are in the Great Purple Lakes of Minnesota, battling the Minnesota Vikings, where they will be concluding their preseason on Saturday. They have a couple of joint practices. We'll get all to that fun stuff later. We got a couple of different topics we're going to bounce around today. But before we get into that, as always, how are you?
Doing good, man. Just started school, so I got a pretty full plate right now. As you can tell, I'm a little tired. I'm looking forward to the Minnesota game. We got a little bit of a reunion of sorts with Jordan Hicks and Byron Murphy this week. Looking forward to seeing those guys out there because they were two great Cardinals, and looking forward to seeing the young guys out there again. See Clayton Tune and Colt duke it out to see who gets to start in Kyler's absence. And let's ride. Let's do it. Cardinals country.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a perfect place to stop the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, a big week for the Cardinals. I'm not so sure the starters are going to play a lot, if at all, on Saturday. So I think the joint practices that are happening today and tomorrow are going to be very big for the team, just in terms of their value final evaluation before they have to trim the roster from 90 to 53. But nonetheless, still a very big game coming up on Saturday for the guys that are going to have to fight for whether that be position battles or just a simply spot on the team or even a practice squad spot. Every stat matters, especially in the third and final week of the preseason. Joint practices, like you said, guys like Jordan Hicks and like Byron Murphy, I don't think anybody blamed them for wanting to leave. Hopefully the Cardinals players don't have to pay for their own meals while they're in Minnesota, but you never know. Before we get into the topic you brought up, who's going to start week one between Clayton Tune or Colt McCoy, got to talk about the elephant in the room. I didn't want to talk about the elephant in the room, but everybody's talking about the elephant in the room, so we got to touch on it. The Indianapolis Colts have given permission to Jonathan Taylor and his camp to seek a trade. Jonathan Taylor, of course, had that phenomenal 2021 season where I think he had 18 rushing touchdowns, just under, I think, whatever amount. Set a Colts single season franchise record for rushing yards in the season and touchdowns in the season as well. Led the NFL in rushing that year. Last year, only played 11 games due to ankle problems. Wants more money than he's currently getting paid. I think he's due just over $4 million this year, according to Spot Track. Doesn't want the $10 million franchise tag that Saquon Barkley refused to sign. Wants top tier money, which is around Christian McCaffrey's 15 or 16 million per year.
Yeah.
Before we get into whether or not the Cardinals should make a move for him, do you think he'll be traded? Do you have any idea of where he'll be traded? And do you think he'll get the money that he wants?
I think he will be traded. I'm just not sure what the timing will be with that. I would not be surprised if he and the Colts come to an agreement for him to sit out until he gets traded. If it seeps into the season, I could easily see it transpiring near the trade deadline more so than right now. It could happen anytime. Like who know? Nobody really knows. But I think a trade will eventually get done. I think the team, honestly, out of everybody to watch out for is Miami. I think Miami feels like too perfect of a fit. I feel like they're trying to really win right now. They really have a running back by committee approach with Raheem Mostert and some of those other guys. And if you add JT to that mix, him and Mostert would be a fire and ice duo. Very explosive, very. I feel like their contrasting styles would kind of complement each other pretty well. And then you throw that in with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, like that's a serious offense. That's going to be causing defense in the AFC some serious headaches. And I do think he will get the money that he's asking for. I don't know if he'd be getting a 4 or 5 year deal with that money, but maybe a 3 year deal. I could easily see that. I think that there's a lot of teams that are looking more to his 2021-2020 seasons than last year. And they're projecting that he will continue being as productive as he was his first 2 seasons. more so than last year. But then again, you got to take into account the shelf life of the running backs. Like in general, I think the average career of an NFL running back is 2 years, maybe even less. You never know when a career is going to end, so you got to take that into account too. So I could see like him getting like a 3 year, 54, 52, something like that $1 million deal.
Yeah, and I think that's where, if I'm the Cardinals, I kind of draw the line too, because you already have
Yeah.
James Conner in the fold. Now, granted, you do need to add somebody else to the running back room, unless Keontae Ingram or Corey Clement go crazy in Minnesota this week. I mean, there's really a need for that secondary presence, especially if they're going to run the ball as much as guys like Drew Petzing and everybody else suggested they are going to in 2023. The tricky thing with Jonathan Taylor, looking past his position, he had 2 different ankle problems last year.
Yeah.
He's still on the pup list, is not 100% healthy, apparently. You already have one guy in James Conner who has a little bit of those history problems in terms of staying healthy. Are you going to pay all of that money to bring another guy in like that? And then I think you layer on top of that the fact that the Cardinals are they're in the very beginning of the rebuild process. Paying a running back in 2023 is just not the smart move. This is not 3 decades ago where they're going to be touching the ball 35 times a game. It just does not make sense for me in any direction.
No, yeah, I agree with that. If you're because I believe the Cardinals are supposed to have upwards of $50 million in cap space next offseason. I feel like if you're going to have that money, you need to spend it on a top edge. You need to spend it on a CB1, maybe even interior O line. Who knows? But yeah, running back would be far down the list.
And people want to bring up the inequality at the running back position, and like I get it because
Yeah,
the how it's turned from even like 7 years ago when guys like Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley and like David Johnson were, captivating the league by storm. Like it feels like we are so far removed from those days, right? Because think about it, you
yeah,
can easily get a capable guy in the second round who you don't have to pay a whole lot. And like you already pointed to, the shelf life of running back is not that extensive. So you run them into the ground, and then you're just able to draft another, right? I mean, it's unlike any other position in football because you can feel really good about paying a top tier wide receiver. You can feel really good about paying a top tier corner, edge player, defensive tackle, quarterback, whatever it might be. Running back, there's going to be 50 more of those dudes who are going to play for pennies on the dollar. They are dime a dozen. And granted, you still have the elite guys like Christian
yeah,
McCaffrey, like some people believe Jonathan Taylor would be. And I think if the Cardinals were in a similar position to where the 49ers were last year, to where they're a playoff team, there's no questions about it. They just need a little bit more of a push. Then I can maybe justify the Jonathan Taylor trade, especially if James Conner was not in the mix and as their RB1. But it's not. The Cardinals are not in that spot. They're not going to be in that spot for this year, probably next year too. It just does not make sense in either way you put it.
yeah. I agree with that. Honestly, if you ask me, I think the only running back that I'd be willing to give absolute top dollar to is Derrick Henry. That's what I've been saying for a while. And I know a lot of people think that people have been saying for years that he was going to fall off like the last 2 or 3 years, I feel like. And he's been just as good every succeeding year. He's built very durable. He did have that foot injury, but I feel like he's completely different from the rest. He's completely separated himself from the pack. And it's, I do feel like the way that running backs are exploited is messed up, but that's kind of how the league operates. And everybody understands that the league is a business. And that's how it that's how it's going to be since the league has shifted philosophically and all that.
Yeah, I think they still have 7 or 8 years on their current CBA too. So like this issue is not going
Yeah.
anywhere. It's only
No.
going to continue to grow with problems. But I mean, we could save all the running back talk for another day. Case in point, Kevin, are you picking up the phone, trying to make a deal for Jonathan Taylor if you're Monty Austin for it?
Not at the moment, no. Especially not for first round equivalent package. there's a reason why Monty accumulated all those picks. It was to use them, it wasn't to trade them away. So I don't think it
especially
would
for a
really be
running back.
worth it at this point. Yeah, not at this juncture. I really do like Taylor as a player. I honestly thought he was near the top of the MVP list that 2021 season before the Colts kind of flamed out at the end of the season. He had that good of a season, but at this juncture, it just doesn't make sense. It makes much more sense for a team like Miami to do that move.
Yeah, Miami was also linked with Dalvin Cook too, so I feel like they feel like they're just one strong running back away, similar to how San Francisco felt last year before they went and got CMC.
Yeah,
Definitely interested to see how that plays out for sure. What a lot of people are trying to see whether it plays out good or bad is Isaiah Simmons playing at safety. Now, this is something people have been talking about for a very long time, almost after his first year in the league when it was very, very clear he was not an inside linebacker. New regime with Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis comes in. They plug him at safety. Everybody's excited because this is his natural position. This is where he fits best at the NFL stage. Saw a little bit of him preseason week 1, but didn't see him a whole lot because Buda Baker didn't play.
yeah,
We finally got a taste of that 3 safety look whenever they were out of their base defense. Jalen Thompson in the slot, Buda Baker in the box, and Isaiah Simmons as a deep free safety. Did not go well. Isaiah Simmons was
no,
the lowest graded Arizona Cardinal against the Kansas City Chiefs. And it felt like deja vu because last year, Travis Kelce and company came and completely demolished the Cardinals. Isaiah Simmons was turned left and right. Same shit, different day for the Cardinals last Saturday. Isaiah Simmons caught napping multiple plays. There was one play where a lot of people questioned his effort whenever Shane Buechele was running towards the pylon, and Isaiah Simmons
yeah.
kind of led up instead of just laying the hammer down on him. But we can get into that here in a little bit. Just give me your thoughts on Isaiah Simmons, how you think he played. Are we overreacting? Should we give him a little bit more time? You tell me.
I mean, like I've personally always been a big fan of Isaiah. He was the at the very top of my list in that draft, who I wanted. I just didn't think that he was actually going to slide to 8. And I know that it was a tough decision for the Cardinals back then. Like even I think it was Kyle Odegaard. He had said on Twitter that a lot of people in the Cardinals front office at that time in the draft preferred Tristan Wirfs over Isaiah. Which, looking back, hindsight's 2020. I feel like Isaiah was still the right pick at the time. Like he was, a lot of people thought that he was a lock to go top 5.
It was a
So
unicorn.
yeah, that's why I was so big on him because he has like freakish size, freakish speed. His instincts seemed very. He was very adept instinctually. There was a lot to like there, but I kind of feel like the way he was utilized under Vance's defense kind of stunted his growth, and some of it, I think, a lot of it falls on coaching. But at some point, when you're that talented of a player, you have to overcome some of those hurdles and rise to the occasion yourself. And I don't think he's done that enough. I think he's flashed being a good player. I think there's been spurts where he has shown that he's a good player, but the consistency just hasn't been there thus far. And when you're getting into year 4, time is kind of the essence. And I think he needs a little bit of time to adjust to the safety spot full time, but he's in the last year of his deal. Next year, he's either going to remain a Cardinal or he's going to go somewhere else.
Mhm.
And I know he's looking for a big deal. If he doesn't come along soon at the safety spot, who knows what kind of deal he might be looking at 1 year of vet minimum somewhere. I feel like both for his career and for the Cardinals, he needs to get his stuff together quickly.
So I was really excited to watch him operate as that deep safety because I like that on paper. I like the range he can provide as that kind of center fielder role with the
Yeah.
length and the speed that he has. I think that's very promising. And then you have Buda Baker down in the box making shit happen. I mean, like what better guy to have is kind of that like strong safety. I don't want to call it like a Troy Polamalu role, but it is almost identical to that. And then like Jalen Thompson, like I remember Vance Joseph was talking about Jalen Thompson being capable of playing in the slot a few years back. So, I don't think Jalen has done bad in that stretch by any imagination. But to Isaiah's credit, first live game playing that deep safety role. The Chiefs did not test him deep, so we didn't get to see any of that. The play recognition, very good.
Yeah.
It's just the positions that he finds himself in. There was one play where he was on man coverage against Travis Kelce, and Mahomes scrambled out to the right. And then Isaiah kept his head in the backfield, lost Travis Kelce, and Kelce picked up a huge gain after he got back to the middle. There was the touchdown where he was playing like cover two, and there was a receiver running a post on the inside of him. Isaiah gave him the inside leverage, and then he was running side by side with the receiver, and then surprisingly, he just got blown past for a touchdown.
Yeah.
The concerns with Isaiah are in coverage, right? Like you do not want to have him in singular coverage. And I just feel like a lot of teams are going to be able to exploit that. A lot of teams are going to be able to watch the film last week and be able to say, okay, we know if we stack the left side of the field, Isaiah Simmons playing that deep safety role, they'll have a corner over on the right side of the field, but basically it's still a one-on-one matchup because Isaiah Simmons is not that great in coverage, right?
Yeah.
So his ball skills have never been that great. He's never, at least at the pro level, he's never really shown that. I just don't know what you do with him. But what they're going to do, they're going to give him more time, as they should, and we might all be overreacting. But he did not play good in his first audition, and maybe we do just need to give Gannon and Rallis time. Maybe we do need to give Simmons time to, get his feet a little bit more wet at that position. But if we're only looking at the early grades and the early returns of Isaiah Simmons at safety, it is not good.
Yeah, and that's crazy to me because, like I said, like coming out of college, I felt like he was pretty good all around, every aspect of playing defense. When you think about it, you're right. Like, really, the only two times where he showed great ball skills, great ability to make game-changing plays, the 2020, the Seattle game where he picked off for us in overtime. Last year, I believe, wasn't that him who forced a fumble on Hunter Renfrow that won the game that was returned by Byron Murphy? Yep. Those are really, like, when you look back, those are really the two.
He picked off Andy Dalton on Thursday Night Football,
plays.
Didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Yep.
Wait, that was Zaven, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember.
I know Marco did because Marco still might be somersaulting in the air right now.
Yeah, yeah. But he's only made a couple of really game-changing plays in his 3 seasons, and he was drafted because the front office kind of thought that he was a game-changing player. He really, on paper, he was, but it just hasn't translated like everybody expected. And it's unfortunate, but I still have faith. I feel like time is running a little short, but I still think there's a little room to grow. I feel like if any player is able to overcome the obstacles that they have in their way, he probably is near the top of players I feel good about actually coming close to what they could be. That makes sense.
No, that completely does. And I think that's a really good point. And I think the Cardinals themselves are in a really good position here. And I know that sounds weird because the last 5 minutes, we just did not talk very highly of Isaiah Simmons at all. But they had to make the difficult decision to not pick up his 5th-year option before they even got to see him step on the field. And in their system, they had to make, I think, a $13 million decision on whether or not he's going to stick around. They said no. They said, hey, we want to pay you, but we got to see it first. And I think they're in a good position only because they're not expected to compete this year. This year is not a gimme year. This isn't like a mulligan year, but this is the first year of a new regime. So there's going to be a little bit of leeway, right? There's not any pressure for them to produce or win. I mean, everybody on the outside expects them to have a top 3, top 5, top 2 pick. If you see Isaiah Simmons improve from right now until next week when they play Minnesota, or I guess here in a couple of days, and then a week after that when they have the break between the preseason and the regular season, then you have 17 games after that. 17 games. if he can eventually settle himself into the player he's supposed to be, and granted, you can coach a lot of things. You can't coach the size that he has, and you can't coach the speed that he has. If you can
Absolutely.
somehow get anything to click between now and week 18 when your season's practically over, you feel good about bringing him back for the future. And I think that's kind of the big picture outlook here is no, he didn't look great last week. There's going to be some bumps and bruises on the right here. And you know what, Kevin, even if he doesn't look all that great, they can wipe their hands clean with him. They are not obliged
Yeah.
to pay him next year at all. They do not have
Mhm.
to go after him. And you know what? I think if they were going to experiment with Isaiah at any spot, it should have been safety. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. It's you didn't tie that much money to him when you declined the option. I feel like the what would have his salary been if you accepted that option? It would have been upwards of 10 mil, right?
Yeah, it would have been upwards of 10 mil. Thankfully, well, maybe not thankfully. Those options are based off of like performance escalators. So like he didn't
Yeah.
make any Pro Bowls, he didn't make any like all pros or anything like that. So like they would have got him cheaper than other players in that draft class.
Yeah, so it might have been a decent value to go ahead and do that, but since he was picked by the last regime, really they don't have any loyalty to him or any ties to him. So if you just realize that you made a mistake and just move on from it, that's fine. You don't have to pay any dues because of that. You just move on, and you have two fantastic safeties, anyways, in Buda and Jalen. So it's not. It hurts that you ended up taking him over Tristan Wirfs or even CD because I feel like
Yep.
even with the D Hop trade, drafting CD would have been a huge splash because the chemistry he had with Kyler was off the charts at Oklahoma. That would have been an insanely fun pick to make, even if it wasn't maybe the right pick. But I just hope that Isaiah doesn't sign somewhere where they know how to use players like ridiculously well, like Philly or New England or something like that. If he
So
signs somewhere
the
like that,
Hassan
he's probably
Reddick.
going to become an all pro. Yeah, he's probably going to become an all pro if he
Yeah.
freaking goes somewhere like that. That would be painful. That's the story of the Cardinals, though.
Simmons' salary in 2024 would have been 12.7 million. A Pro Bowl appearance would have bumped that up to 17 million, and that would have been guaranteed. So can't blame them for not picking up the fifth year option.
Yeah.
Still very, very early. I was going to ask you a question. I was going to ask if you're ready to throw away the Isaiah Simmons hope. You already answered though. You said you're not panicking. You're not going to hit the big red button in the middle of the table like everybody else.
No. I understand why, like the thought process behind why you would be giving up so early, because like I said, what we've seen so far, it's a lot of hit or miss. He's flashed potential to be like flash potential to us that he could be a really really good player, but just hasn't been there consistent enough. But at the same time, when you have a guy like you said with that size, with that speed, with that natural talent, natural ability, it's hard to ignore even with the flaws. I think it's honestly Hassan's a perfect representative for that kind of illusion. He was used at the wrong spot for years, and then when he finally moved to the edge, he showed what a freakish athlete he was, what a natural talent he was, and then he went elsewhere and he shined even more. Which I know this is off topic, but I'm still salty that Steve didn't try to trade Chandler the year before he hit free agency and just decided to keep Hassan because Hassan and JJ would have been a nasty duo off the edge.
Yep.
That would have
But
been
like you
filthy,
said,
but
hindsight is 2020.
hindsight's
But
2020.
unfortunately, that is the case. I'm not ready to give up on him either. I mean, I went back and I watched his film, and not his best outing by any means. But I also know it's preseason. I also know sometimes they just want to see guys in a certain look to see how they react, especially before the regular season. I will give it a handful of games in the regular season before we really come on here and we really start to say
Yeah.
some words about these guys. But didn't love what I saw last week. If he plays this week, it probably won't be a whole lot, but do not give up on Isaiah Simmons just yet. I promise there's room for potential, but how far can potential carry you? Because potential's carried him for the last couple of years, and his fifth-year option got declined. So moving on, last certainly not least, this has been a ongoing conversation for not only you and I, but every other Cardinals fan in existence. I feel like Clayton Tune, man, the entire state has gotten tuned up the last couple of weeks. The hype train is almost off of the rails. Fifth round rookie out of Houston, had a good rookie mini camp, had a good mandatory mini camp, had a good training camp. Has flashes potential both in week 1 and week 2 of the preseason. It is very, very likely he sees a large quantity of snaps again. Kevin, I was in Tempe at the Cardinals facility on Monday. Somebody asked Jonathan Gannon if he was ready to name Colt McCoy as a starter, and he said, we'll name the starters when we need to name the starters. You can take that however you want. I took that as we don't know. We do not know. I'll give you my quick opinion, and I want you to divulge into that. I think Colt's the guy. I think Colt is absolutely the guy. I think Clayton Tune is going to need a crazy performance this week for that to be a really good conversation. I think as of week 1, Colt McCoy is going to be the guy.
I do agree with you. I think it is going to be Colt. Even when you listen to the Burns and Gambo show, Gambo's been saying for weeks that Tune's not going to win the job off of his play. It's going to have to be Colt losing the job. And I think that Colt hasn't played fantastic in the preseason. He's actually kind of been underwhelming. But I feel like when you have a 14-year vet like him with all the experience and his leadership skills and all that stuff, his talent isn't necessarily too big of a factor in that, especially when you're not really trying to compete this year necessarily. I feel like bringing him out there might be more of a steadying kind of level-headed decision to make. I still personally think that we should go with Tune because I think Colt has done a really good job as a spot backup the last couple of years. But your ceiling is only so high with Colt. With Tune, who knows if he's made for it? Who knows if he shows up or he totally nosedives? Just throw him in the fire, I think, because he's shown the ability to push the ball downfield. He's shown the ability to work on a clean platform and deliver some nice balls. That 2-minute drill drive he led against KC was very impressive to me.
Yep.
And yeah, he does. He was a 5th round rookie out of Houston. He's obviously going to have flaws. His ball placement wasn't always there. Hasn't always been there. He's a little slow to run through his progressions, his reads. But that's what comes with being a rookie. I mean, even CJ Stroud struggled, and he was a 2nd overall pick. So I think that even with his shortcomings, he's shown the ability to move the ball a little better. And I'd rather deal with overthrows and underthrows. And I think that at this point in his career, all due respect to Colt, like I said, I very admire him a lot. But I don't think he has that big of an arm. And I think Tune's ability to scramble, his ability to push the ball downfield, makes him the most viable option right now.
Yeah, and Colt McCoy kind of feels like the safe option because he's played so long in the NFL, right? He's seen every coverage known to man. For an offense where you really don't know what it's going to look like come week 1. That kind of continuity, at least at the most important position in football, is valuable. Tell me how you think it's going to play out, then I'll tell you how I think it's going to play out, because I do think Tune is going to start at some point in the regular season. I think Colt McCoy is going to be the guy week 1. They're going to go to Washington. That game's going to play out however it does. They have 2 back-to-back games against the Giants and the Cowboys, week 2 and week 3 at State Farm Stadium. I think at some point in there, they're going to realize Colt is just not the guy. Kyler's going to be coming back within X amount of weeks. Why don't we give the ball to Tune, see what he can do, give him a couple weeks, and at that point, it's whatever because we know Kyler Murray's on his way back. I think Tune, exactly like Gambo had said and that you had brought up, I think Colt's going to lose the job. I don't think Tune's going to win it. But I do think we're going to see both quarterbacks before Murray does return.
I can agree with that. the start to the season is really, really brutal. So I could easily conceive Colts struggling enough where they do like a 2018 where Bradford and Glennon just weren't cutting it. And they were like, let's see what we got with Rosen right here. And obviously, Tune's not as highly touted as Rosen, but he honestly possesses a lot of the same traits and skill
Don't
sets
say that.
and ability on paper.
Don't say that.
Rosen, like he was horrible, but like on paper, he was pretty enticing. Uh, I like the Commanders, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Bengals. That's just an absolutely brutal stretch. So I could definitely see them throwing him into the fire there. And I think his ability to run the ball is going to be a little bit of a factor in that as well. When you go up against a defense like the Cowboys with Micah Parsons off the edge, the Bengals
He's
with
coming.
Sam Hubbard off the edge, like these guys are coming for you, and you're going to have to be very aware in the pocket, and you're probably going to have to improvise and scramble off script plays a lot. Uh, and I think that Clayton has more the ability to maneuver that than Colt does.
Yeah, Tune flashed on multiple occasions last weekend the ability to, at worst, get himself out of trouble. I like his pocket presence a lot. He climbs the pocket well. I think he has a good feel for when pressure is coming. His accuracy for me is just all over the place. I mean, outside of the
Yeah.
numbers, he was not good at all. But like you said, he led a very good 2 minute drive at the end of that half. I think the tools are there. It's just whether or not he's able to progress through reads and become an NFL quarterback up here, right? Because we know the talent is there.
Yeah.
I think it's up here that separates guys who are able to start every week in the NFL and guys who can maybe only be a spot starter.
Yeah.
What we're not talking about, what everybody seems to forget, is Colt McCoy himself does struggle with injuries. And not a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people are talking about that too. Not to say Colt McCoy breaks down easily, but like he hasn't exactly gotten out of each season healthy. I mean, we saw that last year, right? Whenever they have David Blau, the magician, starting against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, granted, I don't think David Blau played too bad in that game, but nonetheless, they felt Colt was the guy moving forward, and they felt strongly enough of Tune to place him as quarterback 2 behind Colt. Granted, I don't really think this week matters in terms of the quarterback race. I think they're thinking about starting Tune. I do think that has been a real conversation. I just think at the end of the day, week 1, Colt McCoy is going to be the guy, and then it's going to trickle on from there. And I think Tune eventually does get his shot.
I was going to say, though, this isn't Cardinals related, but this is local related. I wouldn't be surprised if they throw a curveball and they do name Tune the starter week 1. It could be a lot like the ASU situation where he thought the veteran guy with considerable experience was going to get the job, but the young guy just shows just enough ability and talent to give him the reins in a transition year. I would be slightly surprised. I would not be shocked if
Who
that's the
knows, man?
same thing for Tune.
Both teams are in the dawn of a new era, right? Both teams have guys who have never officially taken the field as a starting quarterback for their teams. Who knows, man? It might happen. And I mean, I doubt we see Colt McCoy. If we do, it's going to be for a drive on Saturday. Because like I said, I think the team is using this week of joint practices with Minnesota as kind of their like dress rehearsal. Because it's going to be in a controlled environment. They're going to be able to get live reps against another team. And then Saturday is going to kind of be for their evaluations of guys who are going to be trying to make the 50, 51, 52, and 53 roster spots. If Clayton Tune goes out and throws for like 3 or 4 touchdowns, I think me and you are hopping on the podcast next week and we're having a serious conversation of whether or not this should happen. I don't think that's going to happen. But I don't know. New regime, nobody's really able to rule anything out. It is certainly exciting. Do you have anything else to add before we put a bow on this conversation?
Not really.
Not good conversations and data. If you guys have any comments, concerns, any predictions for the quarterback value, go leave them below in the comment section. But thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. Go to follow our work at allcardinals.com or si.com. twitter.com/NFL/Cardinals. Follow Kevin on Twitter at khicks_21. Follow me on Twitter at Donnie Druin. We will see you guys after the Vikings play the Cardinals this week. After next week, man, regular season football is here. See you guys later.
So